Wait, hold on. I'm sorry.
Even
I got a really interesting email from a trans person about neopronouns. Um, and about how pointless they are. And about how pointless it is to correct somebody and have them tell you, or have you tell somebody your pronouns. Um, this is a really interesting email that I'd never thought of before. I don't even know how many other people, I don't know how many trans people even think about pronouns like this. I'm sorry, hold on. I just remembered this email. This was a really interesting email. I'll just read the last 3 paragraphs of this. I think that this conception of dysphoria can be used to understand a particular experience I and others have had in trans circles, and that is relating to pronouns. ContraPoints caught a lot of flack for a take that she had a while ago where she talked about the phenomenon of pronoun circles. She essentially wasn't a fan of the whole concept because it feels like a woke way to clock someone. When 9 cis people and 1 trans person get in a room, and that's the only time we decide to start doing pronoun circles, that could be pretty annoying. What Contra really wants in these situations for her pronouns to be assumed. The blowback she received was arguing that, actually, pronoun circles and other such rituals are useful because some people don't have assumable pronouns. My hot take on this, they say it's a hot take, my hot take on this, which I think is supported by this conception of social dysphoria, is that pronouns which aren't assumable are basically a complete waste of time. Why does it hurt to be referred to by the wrong pronoun? There's no venom in the word itself. The only reason it hurts is that when someone uses a gendered pronoun, it carries a payload of information about their mental model of us. That they think of us differently than we think of ourselves, that's what's triggering the social dysphoria. Afterwards, when we correct them and they start using the pronouns that we prefer, all we've done is enter a collective fiction. Their mental model is still just as incongruent with mine as ever, but I get to pretend otherwise so long as they don't directly tell me about it again. It's one thing to be so early in transition that your gender expression doesn't lead people to construct their models in the way you'd prefer. It's completely another for your ideal transition state to not induce assumable pronouns. That would be the case, for example, when pronouns differ significantly from gender expression, or in the case of neopronouns. This use of pronouns is, in my opinion, completely aesthetic and has no relation whatsoever to social dysphoria. If you can't assume my pronouns, perhaps because you didn't even know those words before I told you, then your use of them carries absolutely zero information about your conception of my gender. The only thing it tells me is that you agreed to enter this fiction with me, and any influence that this has on my social dysphoria is either misunderstood or a complete placebo. The sting of a misplaced pronoun is at least genuine. If you can't assume my pronouns, then really, what the hell is the point? That was an interesting... I should have read, actually before this, I should have just read their whole email. There was some interesting stuff above, kind of on that. I'll read the 2 pronouns above this. It's just interesting. I think I have to do a little bit of philosophical grounding to make my point first. I hope you forgive me. When humans are social with each other, we like to pretend that we are communicating quite directly. That when I say the right words in the right way, the idea in my head is now suddenly in your head. This is a fiction, because the words we speak don't belong to us as soon as they have been spoken. They exist in this weird social space and are taken from there, and in the process, they become entailed in a lot of social baggage. When I write this email, I'm not really talking to you. The target of these words, as far as my mind is concerned, is a mental model of you that I have constructed inside my head. We all keep these mental models of each other, and to some extent, we are aware of the fact that other people have models of us. This all seems pretty obvious, but to my understanding, this is really where dysphoria comes from. I have a mental model of myself, and unfortunately, it conflicts strongly with all the sense data coming in telling me about how my body actually is. This is biological dysphoria. My experience of social dysphoria is essentially the exact same, except that the conflict is between my mental model of myself and other people's mental models of me. It's distressing to discover that other people are constructing me in a way I know to be incompatible with my own conception of myself. How can we ever communicate if our targets are so mismatched? And then they talk about the pronoun thing. That was like I'm not saying that I think that giving pronouns is bad or whatever or anything like that, but it was like an interesting way to explain, I guess, like pronouns. I've never really thought about it, but have you gotten any emails arguing in favor of neopronoun stuff? Yeah, so one of the emails that I got earlier, I got a couple of good pushback emails today and yesterday. And their kind of conception of everything was that a long time ago, society was hardcore was hardcore restrictive in terms of societal acceptance of trans people. That it's just like, it's really fucked, like trans people were fucked, and that it was basically like a horrible thing. But going forward, we've opened up gender expression way more, and that having like people being more open, more willing to explore gender identities, more... let me see if I can find like a better, like a quote I can pull from here. I assume that a society that accepts and allows for ugly, non-passing, non-binary, xenogender, neopronoun using trans people is, all else equal, better than a society that allows for only some or none of these things. I assume this because I do not think there are substantive differences between the dysphoria described by optically bad trans people and the dysphoria described by optically good trans people. Optically bad trans people tend to have a variety of normal dysphoria sources and so on, and a couple of abnormal dysphoria solutions, which they claim feel the same as the normal dysphoria solutions. This being the case, I said xenogender people are legitimately helped by being identified as xenogender, and non-binary people are legitimately helped by transitioning as they see fit as the null hypothesis. This was like an interesting email. I don't think I 100% agree with what they were saying, but I can understand this a little bit more. There was that, and then there was another one that I talked about earlier for why there aren't as many older trans people, I guess, sometimes in some of the trans support groups, but it's interesting stuff. Don't we do that normally? Allow people to believe in social fantasies. I might think someone is fat, but I'm not going to tell them. And that person can continue living, believing I don't see them as fat. Well, but if they think you see them as fat, that's enough for them, whether you do or don't. What's important isn't really what exists in your mind. It's what people think exists in your mind, right? The prototypical example is a person walks into a gym and you are petrified because you think, oh my God, everybody's looking at me, everybody's judging me, everybody hates me, everybody thinks I'm fat, everybody thinks blah, 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 blah. And that your thought about their thoughts is more important than their thoughts. Because the reality is no one is looking at you. Nobody thinks about you. Nobody cares. But if you think they think that, that's enough for you to experience some distress, you know? Except for me. I go to the gym and I judge everybody. I walk around specifically looking for weak people, and right when they are finishing their sets, I ask if I can warm up with their max. That's what I do. And then I drop the barbell on their neck, and then I say, do you even lift? And then I crush them beneath my boot. Yeah, I hang out in grade school gyms. I'm just kidding. That sounded weird. Never mind.